And they should. And they should.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. If you are not paying attention to what's happening, there is a very big chance that you're going to end up out of business in the next few years. You need to look, because the crypto exchanges, they are very well capitalized. They understand tech. They know what they are doing, and they have already a massive overlap between some of their clients. So they need to be paying attention. Absolutely.
Well, I'm delighted today to be joined by Pedro Birmann, the founder of Quadra Trade, a digital assets infrastructure provider. Quadra Trade is, I think, one of the most exciting platforms out there in any asset class. I've got to be honest, I saw a demo that Pedro gave me a few weeks ago of the platform, and I have to say it was a very, very impressive platform in many respects. And we'll go into that as we discuss. But Pedro, let's talk a little bit about you and your background to start with, if you don't mind. You come from a traditional banking trading background, and you've made the move into crypto. Can we just talk about how that happened? Because that's always interesting to me when people move from TradFi to digital assets. How did that happen?
First and foremost, thank you very much for having me here, Sam. I think that's long overdue.
It is.
This chat. And thank you very much for the very kind words about our products. We take a lot of pride, and we are very, very happy with everything that we've been building. So let me answer your question. I've, like many people that are in digital assets today, I came from a traditional finance background. I spent most of my career on trading desks for large banks. In my last role, I used to trade sterling STIRT products, short-term interest rate products. I have to say to you, I think that I've been, I don't know if you remember this, but before everything that happened after COVID, interest rate products in the developed worlds, they were very, very boring. When interest rates were zero or negative or close to zero, things were very, very dull. And I've always loved trading, but I was trading sterling rates, I traded Canadian rates, I did front-end rates, FX swaps, all of those things. And I was actually looking for something a little bit more exciting. I ended up getting to know about digital assets by chance, right? I had people talking about Bitcoin on the trading floors, and I've always been very, very skeptical about everything related to digital assets. I couldn't wrap my head around the value proposition. It was something that I confess my ignorance was so enormous that prevented me from entering crypto when I should have entered crypto. That was about 10 years ago.
I'm the same.
At the end of the day, I had this one guy that used to work with me, and I've told this story a few times. I had this one guy that used to work with me, and I used to detest him. I'm going to be honest. And he wouldn't shut up about Bitcoin. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to study about the subject just to have arguments so I can discuss this and debate this with him. And the exact opposite effect happens. I ended up deep diving into what is the Bitcoin white paper. And it clicked immediately for me. I realized the elegance and the simplicity of what was being proposed in that paper, and how it actually solved lots of issues with regards to electronic and digital money. And that led me into this, I got into this rabbit hole, and I started researching about smart contracts. And then I went into the Ethereum white paper. And then I decided, let's get more technical. Let's go in the yellow paper and try to understand what they are offering. And then all of those things, they became very, very fascinating for me. I started listening to podcasts with a bunch of people. I don't know if you know, there is a guy called Silvio Micali. He is this Italian professor. He's an MIT professor, and he started the Algorand Foundation, and there's the Algorand blockchain. And he gave a few lectures, and he's a brilliant cryptographer. And when I realized the caliber of the people behind some of these projects in crypto, I realized that some of the smartest people in the world were working in those problems. And it made me realize that was something very, very interesting. Obviously, for me, being a trader and spending, I spent 17 years in the markets trading FX forwards and cross-currency basis. When I started looking at digital assets, there were some absurd opportunities, right? So if you think about 2020, 2019, when the CME launched Bitcoin futures, the spot futures basis was absurd. All of those things for me didn't make any sense since they are digital assets, right? So for me, the obvious thing was like, how can I participate in this and make some money? And I decided to start trading on my personal account initially. And then those things rapidly evolved into me realizing that I was making virtually more money trading derivatives on my personal accounts than I was in my day job at the bank. So I end up getting two of the smartest kids that were working with me at the time, and then we said, well, cool, let's go out and set out to build a quantitative crypto funds. And then we raise money. We do this on a full-time basis. It was obvious to me that some of those opportunities wouldn't persist, but I thought there is so much fragmentation in the market that all of these inefficiencies will carry on for a long, long time. And if we have the right tools, we can exploit those and we can actually generate some alpha out of this whole thing.
So sorry, Pedro, could I just interrupt you there? We're talking about like arbitraging between exchanges and the futures and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. We were doing all of those things, right? You have, there is some very interesting things that were originated in digital assets, right? You have the creation of perpetual swaps that are futures that never expire, right? So all of those things, they were given rise to this fragmentation between markets. You have to think that in digital assets, it's very different from what we have in TradFi. If I'm buying a derivative on an exchange in TradFi, it's the same thing. I can close out that position by selling the equivalent derivative in another exchange. They are equivalent in traditional assets. In digital assets, each of those exchanges, they carry a different credit risk profile. Each of those exchanges, they carry a different supply and demand profile. So all of those things influence the price of those derivatives. So you have lots of opportunities in digital assets. When we realized this, we thought this is something that we can make decent money. Let's try to do this on a full-time basis. And let's be honest, it was far more exciting than trading front-end rates in sterling before we had inflation back again, right? So I think that now is a little bit more exciting once again. But at the time, this was the motivation. So when we and to come back to why we started Quadra, when we got into digital assets, we realized that there were lots of opportunities. And then we started looking for infrastructure. Right, I needed infrastructure. I needed connectivity to all of these venues. I needed to have tools to route orders to these venues. I needed to be able to exploit those things that we were seeing. And then we started shopping around, and it became apparent very quickly for us that you had a few companies offering elements of what we were looking for, but none of the companies had this cohesive product vision where they were trying to offer a unified interface that did everything that we were looking for. And we started with 4 essential pillars. As a portfolio manager, that I think that are essential for any trader at all times. So we were looking for risk management, collateral management, portfolio management in OEMS, right? I had to be able to visualize my risk in a way that made sense. I had to be able to route orders in an efficient manner. So when we were looking at all of the infrastructure providers, it became clear that there was one that was very good for routing orders. There was another one that was a great PMS system. But none of them offered all of the things that we were looking for in a single place. So the last thing I wanted to do as a portfolio manager was to be dealing with 15 different trading venues and have to deal with 5 different vendors. That was it didn't make any sense for us. So we ended up doing something that a lot of the larger funds do, that was to invest heavily in building the infrastructure. So we started building the in-house system for the funds that we were working on. It wasn't to build a product. Right, I built what I needed to actually generate the alpha as a fund manager. So this is, I think, that is an important distinction, because I was not the guy that was building trading solutions for AQR and then decided to bring that experience and build that into a company. I was the guy that was the end user that knew exactly what I was looking for, and I wanted to build something that someone like me would immediately see the value. So we started by building the in-house system that became eventually Quadra Trade. So this is how I got into crypto.
Great story, and it's always the best solution to create your own solution to a problem is the best way to build products, quite frankly. So
that's right. Otherwise, you are finding a problem to your solution, right? In this case, is I think that's the right order.
So how did you go from fund managing to then focusing 100% on Quadra Trade?
What we noticed in the early days were a few things. We realized that first, I don't like to think in terms of digital assets and TradFi assets. I think that's obvious that we are going through a transformational period right now where there is convergence, and I don't think that there will be digital assets or TradFi. I think that there will be global markets. These global markets will operate. In some cases, will continue to operate as they do today, and in some cases, they will migrate into a tokenized form or in a digital form, and so on and so forth. So when I realized that this is something that is inevitably happening, and I started listening to people talking about what was needed for the institutions in TradFi to move into digital assets. All that you heard about was, they need regulatory clarity. And this is absolutely a given, right? Is a fact. But then I realized, okay, regulatory clarity is something that's out of my control right now. I'm still not, I'm not lobbying governments or regulators just yet. But what's going to happen, in my view, is that inevitably this will eventually happen. And then what they are going to need is an infrastructure that makes sense, that modernizes their existing tech stacks, and so on and so forth. So when we made this realization, we realized that building infrastructure was something that had tremendous potential. And then the rest, I think, this is history. We've been doing this now for close to 4 years. Obviously, our products, they have evolved, right? I like to think that we have all of these building blocks. We have 3 core products, right? We have Quadra Trade, that's this unified interface that can connect to multiple different venues, that has elements for risk management, portfolio management, collateral management, and execution. We have Quadra Prime, that is this operating system That's brokers, prime of primes, investment banks, OTC desks. They can use the system as an operating system for their operations, right? So Quadra Prime, what it does in essence is that it connects to multiple venues, liquidity providers. It allows our clients to aggregate liquidity, to transform liquidity. They can add spreads, tiers, fee configurations, lending and borrowing configurations, and they can stream that liquidity back to their clients. And what they get is exactly all the risk management, the collateral management systems, the portfolio margining. All of this is built in. And the last product is CoinMatch. CoinMatch is an RFQ platform for OTC derivatives. Sam, I don't know if you know this, but in digital assets, most of the volumes they happen in exchanges, right?
Yep.
So if we think about what the FX market was in the early 90s, was mostly exchange traded products. And once you had some clarity with regards to the standardization of the documentation, right? So with ISDA, CSA Annex, some regulatory clarity. And then you ended up getting the OTC markets that boomed into what they are today, that are orders of magnitude bigger than exchange traded products for FX, at least. My vision is that the same is going to happen with digital assets, right? So CoinMatch offers this very clean set of workflows that allow parties to interact with each other and trade bilaterally OTC derivatives. So there is not only a matching engine, but there is also a margining engine that allows for things like initial margin or variation margin, all the settlements to take place. It does all of those things. So when you take these three different products that we've created, we have multiple different building blocks, and these building blocks allow us to configure them however we want, however our clients needs, to build essentially any type of infrastructure that any sort of institutional player requires to enter the space. So our clients right now, they are interdealer brokers, they are prime brokers, they are investment banks in South America, and we have hedge funds as clients. So all of these guys interact with versions of our software.
Okay, it's an amazing product to create. And how long did it take you? 4 years, did you say? Well,
we were doing this in phases, right?
Yeah.
Before we launched Quadra, we were building the in-house risk management system and routing system for the funds I was working. So when we decided to launch Quadra, I think that within 6 months or 9 months right after we raised our pre-seed rounds, we were able to put something in front of a few clients. Right. So we had a PMS and an RMS and a collateral management system that we put in front of their clients, of our clients. And then came the execution components. And then what happened was that we were showing our trading interface to banks and prime brokers and brokers. And then they were asking, whoa, I really like the interface. Can I white label this and put this in front of my clients? And then when they asked that led to an internal discussion with my team. I said, like, if we were to make this a white label interface that people can put in front of their clients, how can we really add value for them? Right. And then that's how Quadra Prime was born. We built Quadra Prime that did everything else that they needed. Not only they can white label Quadra Trade and put a branded award-winning interface in front of their clients, we've built the entire operating system that allows them to do everything that they need to offer trading services to their clients. So this is how one thing led to the other. And then came the OTC derivatives component. Right, that was because we were dealing when we were in the funds. We had companies that were pitching OTC derivatives for us, and one of the things that frustrated me the most was that we had just survived FTX. right? The collapse of FTX. And then I had companies, and one of them recently went bust. It was a big failure in the United States. They were saying, like, we can trade options and market make options to you, but you need to send your collateral to us. Right. And then that for me was like, but this is, I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't want to send collateral to an OTC market maker. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't care how good your prices are. It's just a credit risk that I don't have enough tools to quantify or to measure. So we started discussing this concept of having think of a clearinghouse elements. We were trying to think outside of the box. What is the point in having a whole new asset class, a new industry, if you cannot reimagine and redesign the systems, right? So, of course, I'm borrowing a lot of things from TradFi, but this is an opportunity to disintermediate a lot of things, to reimagine a lot of things. So we were like, how can we make this possible? What would make me feel comfortable to trade with another firm, an OTC derivative? And then we realized a lot of these guys are using the same custody provider. A lot of these guys are using the same infrastructure to custody those assets. What if we build a system that sits atop of this and allows people to communicate to each other, to RFQ each other, to price these derivatives in a seamless way? What if we build a generalized margin engine that can hold the collateral in their own wallets or in their own vaults? So this is what we've built. So instead of having to rebuild traditional markets infrastructure into digital assets, we've upgraded what existed in digital assets to offer enough comforts to the players so they could trade with each other. So this is the progression. We started with Quadra Trades, and then together we were building the RFQ matching engine, CoinMatch, with Quadra Prime, because it was a natural evolution to everything that we were doing and was the feedback that we were getting from clients.
Okay, does that mean that the platform is custodian agnostic? So
it is absolutely. So we have a pilot right now with Copper. Copper is one of the largest custodians, but the underlying infrastructure, we are actually in discussions with multiple custodians right now, and not only custodians. Think of a prime broker that can custody assets in digital assets. Instead of building this entire infrastructure that allows their clients to transact with each other, OTC derivatives, they can just get CoinMatch. They could white label CoinMatch. We don't mind this at all. We want to build a sleek, functioning, seamless stack. I don't care if you put your brand on it or if you're using our brands. For me, the passion is in actually building the infrastructure that makes things work in a seamless fashion. There is nothing more frustrating for a trader to have to deal with multiple different trading systems, to have issues visualizing risk. So we really, really care about the user experience, right? So if a custodian wants to offer their clients, and they have the licenses to offer this, the ability for them to start transacting with each other in a seamless way, we can absolutely help them. Absolutely.
Great. So what does this mean for, let's say, a retail broker or a B2B institutional liquidity provider that wants to offer digital assets to their clients? And let's say they're not, at the moment, they're probably offering crypto CFDs, but they want to get into the market a bit more seriously. What's the roadmap for them? How does that look like working with you?
Well, the very first thing, get in touch. We can absolutely help you. So some of the things that we do right now with all of those building blocks is that we are connected to 30 plus different crypto venues. We are connected to some of the largest liquidity providers, the OTC desks in digital assets. So any sort of assets that is available in these exchanges or offered by these liquidity providers become immediately available to these brokers that want to offer this to their clients. And this includes some of the hottest things right now. Right, we are talking about pre-IPO perps. We are talking about tokenized stocks. We are talking about prediction markets. Right, prediction markets is something that is it's very, very exciting. So the way that this works is that the broker would be using our infrastructure. We can connect directly to the exchanges, to the venues, to the liquidity providers. We offer the entire technology needed for them to aggregate liquidity in however they want. The interesting thing is that if you think about the ECN model, right? ECN providers, they aggregate liquidity. They can curate order books based on the different types of clients that they are servicing. We actually put this entire infrastructure in front of the broker, and they can elect if they want to curate order books by clients. They get all of this flexibility. They can elect how they are going to monetize that bid offer, right? They can add a spread to the raw aggregated stream, or they can have a fee tiering model that resembles a lot what a crypto exchange offers. And on top of this, if these brokers, they want to modernize the way that their clients interact with their liquidity, right? Most of these brokers, they are using some of the very successful legacy trading interfaces, right? You have platforms like MT5 that have their place, and they are very good at what they do. But what we are seeing is that the crypto exchanges, they are capturing more and more of this retail flow, and now they are more than crypto exchanges, right?
Yeah.
They are offering FX, they are offering stocks via perps or tokenized form. They have prediction markets built in them, and they have a very sleek, simple to use interface. So what we offer is a white label version of Quadra Trades, where these brokers, they can customize the entire experience and they can put a branded version of their platform in front of their clients. Obviously, if they want to, we manage all of the API connections, so we can deal with all of that. We can offer a fixed API to their clients. We can manage all of that experience for them. So they can use us for virtually everything, right? From liquidity aggregation to risk management to even white labeling the entire platform that they are going to put in front of their clients.
So just to be clear, a client can have a white label of the Quadra Trade platform in front of their clients, or they could have an API from Quadra Trade going into one of the multiple front-end GUIs that they may already be using with their clients. If
that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. We can offer all of those things, right? So if they, I can give you an example. We have, although this is not a broker, is an investment bank in South America. They have a trading portal that they were putting in front of their clients for FX. Right, so this trading portal, their clients, they could they are a Brazilian bank. They could buy or sell US dollars, euros, and so on and so forth. So we built. They are using Quadra Prime to aggregate liquidity for stable coin and things like that. And what we do is we expose an API that has now been integrated into this portal, and now their clients, they can choose the rail that they want to use for FX transactions, for cross-border payments. So they can choose the traditional rail that goes via a fiat rail, or they can use the digital one that goes via stablecoin. And on the background, all of the routing of orders, aggregation of liquidity, the booking of trades, all of that happens inside of our systems and feeds the risk engine.
Okay, so I think retail brokers are feeling a little bit threatened by the crypto exchanges moving into their territory, let's say.
And they should. And they should. Yeah. Let's be honest. If you're not paying attention to what's happening, there is a very big chance that you're going to end up out of business in the next few years. You need to look, because the crypto exchanges, they are very well capitalized. They understand tech. They know what they are doing, and they have already a massive overlap between some of their clients. So they need to be paying attention. Absolutely.
So is it fair to say that Quadra Trade is a very fast route into reclaiming some of that territory they might be losing to the crypto exchanges, if they can offer the things like pre-IPO stocks, tokenized equities, and so on?
100%, 100%. This is, so when we onboard because we are talking here, we are servicing clients that are either, think about B2B2B or B2B2C, right? And so on and so forth. We are talking about situations where we had a client that's an inter-dealer broker in the UAE. They were applying for their VARA license, and for they had a problem with their previous vendor, and they had to do a demo to the regulator. That was the final stage to get their VARA license. They got in touch with us. We had about 6 weeks to implement the entire solution with their specifications. We've done it. The regulators, they were mind blown about everything that they showed with their brands, and they got everything that they wanted. And they've been with us now for close to a year. Now, and we have this very healthy relationship with these guys. I like to say and I say this to all of our prospective clients. I like to say that with all of the building blocks that we generally have between 85 to 95% of everything that they need straight out of the box. Right. And there is this 15 to 5% area that is where you really make an impact with your clients. You need to allow them to make my platform their own. And we do this by offering so much flexibility with regards to the customization. What we generally do is that whenever people interact with us, we offer them a bank of hours, and they can use this bank of hours to really transform this 95%, they can build that extra 5%, or the 85%, they can build that extra 15%. We do the customizations, the custom integrations. Some clients, they have a different way to deal with lending and borrowing, for instance, right? We have clients that are in the CFD FX broker space that you described, and we have clients that are investment banks. So we need to have this flexibility, and we allow them to build all of this. The other thing that we do that is under discussed, I think, to some or underreported in some cases, is that because of the granularity of the data that we can capture, we can actually assist these guys with all the regulatory reporting. Right, so we amongst our clients, we have MiCA license, VARA license, FCA, FEMA regulated companies, and now we have a couple banks in South America that are going through the authorization process with the Brazilian Central Bank. In our tech is crucial for them, because it allows them to do all of those things and allows them to meet the regulatory requirements to all of these regulators and to be compliant with all of their needs.
So thank you for that. So if you're a retail broker and you're considering getting into digital assets in a bit more of a complete way, what does the roadmap look like? What do they need to consider? So first of all, I'm thinking there may not be the experience within the firm of dealing with digital assets. They know they want to get into it. Do they need to have an expert in digital assets on board, or can they use a existing experience with, let's say, TradFi, or do they need to hire somebody?
I love to say that is the skills that you develop as an FX trader or a single equity trader are highly transferable to digital assets. You just need to think that they are orders of magnitude more volatile, and you need to re-educate your mind with when it comes to any of the fundamentals, right? Because it's very different when you are evaluating an asset that is generating cash flow. In some cases, you do have this in digital assets as well, but it's different when you are evaluating the path of a stock price versus the path of a token price, right? The economics are different. But when you strip all of that out and you look at things purely on a quantitative fashion, you immediately understand this is an asset that is trading at 50 vols versus 3 vols. And I have parallels into the FX world with emerging markets economies that I can, if I've traded Turkish lira in the past, probably you can trade some Bitcoin, right? And
you've got broad enough shoulders. If you can trade Turkish lira, then
exactly. I've seen some horror stories with Turkish lira, but ultimately, I think that if they have already, because these guys are experts at the end of the day managing FX risk, right? You have lots of these guys that are very, very well equipped into managing FX risk. They've survived. Some of them survived lots of blowups, right? The SNB and all of those things. So for them, wouldn't be anything radically new. What would be new for them is to understand, how do I connect to liquidity?
Yeah.
How is the market? Why is the market so fragmented? Right. So all of those things we tend to have. So we help them. What we tend to do, Sam, is that when they get in touch with us, the first thing that we do is a workshop. We want to understand from them what they are thinking. How would they want to commence this digital asset journey? And then they start by discussing with us what their current setup is, how they deal with aggregation of liquidity, how they deal with putting that liquidity in front of their clients, how they deal with hedging that liquidity. And then we move into, now let's show what we can do. And how we do all of those things. And generally here, there is an aha moment, right? You were so kind to say that we have a very good platform. Generally, when we are going through this phase where we are showing how we handle all of those things for them, they realize that there is an opportunity that goes beyond digital assets for them, right? Some of them, they started asking, can I fit my FX liquidity through the same Quadra Prime system, this operating system? And it's something that we absolutely can do.
So spot FX, sorry, just to be clear on that, Pedro, you can take spot FX liquidity from multiple sources and aggregate that in Quadra Trade as well.
Absolutely. And to be honest, we don't necessarily need to. We are integrated with some of the ECN providers. We are integrated with some of the bridges that are supporting already these clients, these FX and CFD brokers. So we can offer them a solution that does all of that, or if they want to continue using their liquidity pipes, they can continue to use this. We can just plug them in our system, and then they can use our risk management system for those things. They can do all of those things. But the interesting thing is that we tend to do this workshop, and then we start mapping out all of the gaps between what they want with what we have. And one thing that became apparent to me, Sam, is that sometimes people don't even know. I'm being honest. Sometimes people don't know what they want. If you haven't been shown a proper risk management system before, and you've been operating in the markets for 15 years, you probably you can live without that, right? The question is, how much more and how much better would you become if you had that system? And that's the moment that we start advising these guys and we start helping them, and then we start seeing these efficiencies. I don't know if we have time for this, but I have an interesting story, Sam. In my career, I was always very focused on building. I wasn't building myself, but I was an avid user of risk and trading systems. And at some point in my career, I went from one bank into Credit Suisse. I will name Credit Suisse because Credit Suisse is no longer, right?
You can, yeah.
And I remember getting into the FX swaps desk at Credit Suisse, and some of my colleagues there, and I love them to bits. They are my friends to date. They managed to use those systems for 20 years before me, and they did exceptionally well. But when I got there, first I had a trading blotter that didn't show me live P&L on my trades, right? It was so outdated. I had a risk management system that didn't combine FX risk versus futures risk. So all of the basic stuff that I was so much used in the other banks that I worked were absent there. So I went to the managing director, the guy that was responsible for the trading floor, and I started pitching this to him. And then his argument was like, if you can show me quantitatively how much more money we will make if we invest in the systems, I will approve this. And then obviously that's a very difficult thing to do, because I don't know, but it was difficult to understand how much more it would be made. But it's obvious that they struggle to manage risk effectively.
Did you get that? Did you get that approved?
So I end up leaving the bank.
Okay.
Right, I was so frustrated about their systems that I couldn't bring myself. The last thing I wanted was to be building risk systems on an Excel sheet, and was what every single trader there was doing. So for me, Quadra is exactly this, right? So when we talk to our clients, first, they are not. I hate the word clients. They are not simply our clients. They are our partners. I want them to think about us as this extension of their operations, and it's not a bunch of devs that have built a trading system based on the specifications of someone. No, we are a team of market experienced professionals. My co-founder is a former trader as well. I am a trader. We have a variety of skills in-house that makes us quite unique. So when we go in meetings and the guy's talking about risk, or talking about order routing, or talking about these things, or the experience that they want their clients to have, we actually understand that firsthand. So we are not only listening to what they are saying, but we are challenging some of those assumptions as well. Okay. I am suggesting different approaches. I'm saying, do you think that this makes sense versus how about this? This is how I would do it. And then we realize that you have almost this, there's this consulting element to the sales process that makes dealing with us quite unique. And I think that this is super valuable, because you end up offering alternatives, you exchange ideas, you build something that is actually doing exactly what they need. I think that this is the biggest differential for what we are trying to do here at Quadra versus some of the other companies.
Okay. So what about the practical question of, let's say you're connected to 15 different exchanges and some of the DEXs, and some market makers and so on. Does the broker that comes to you, they have to go and have those 15 conversations with 15 exchanges to get the relationship established? Or how does that work? What's the
So this is a very valid question, and one that we answer quite a lot. We are a neutral software provider, so we don't necessarily act as a principal or an agent, or we are not a prime broker. None of this, and this is exactly why it's interesting to have a conversation with us when you are there is no conflicts of interest, if you will. Yeah. So what we tend to do is to, if these guys don't have a relationship with the venues or with the liquidity providers, we have a very, very good relationship with all of these guys. So we tend to map out what their needs are, and then we make a recommendation to them that they can choose to follow or not. And we make all of the introductions. And we can also assist them initially with regards to what is the basic. This is not what we do as a service, but we can inform them things like, if you are looking for this type of products, you want to offer perpetual swaps on stocks. These venues here are the most liquid ones, and we can make the introductions. They do need to have a bilateral relationship with those guys, right? We are not intermediating things. What we tend to do is that some of our clients, they use certain prime brokers that offer direct market access to different venues, and then we can make an introduction with that prime broker if that's the case, right?
So the way that works then, the retail broker would come to or be introduced to a crypto prime broker, have that relationship, and that crypto prime broker would then switch on the connections they have without then having to go and have multiple conversations with the liquidity providers.
That's generally the way it works, yes. Yeah. And that works for us as well. It doesn't change anything whatsoever for us. They would provide a sub-account to this retail broker. The retail broker would have the credentials for each of the venues. Those are plugged into our system, and then all the magic is happening. We are aggregating liquidity. We are aggregating risk. We allow them to route orders. They can skew prices to control inventory. They can do all sorts of things. A book, B book, doesn't matter. We can do all of those things for them in our systems.
Okay, so if a retail broker wanted to offer pre-IPO stocks like SpaceX, we've had that, but Anthropic's coming up and OpenAI is coming up. They could get set up with some of the DEXs or whoever, like Hyperliquid, who facilitate that through Quadra, and then they could pass that out to their clients.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that it's no longer, is not only the DEXs. Right. I think virtually all the tier one exchanges in crypto now offer perps on pre-IPO stuff. So it's very exciting. The market is booming in that side of the market. So absolutely, they can come to us if they have an account with those exchanges. Is very streamlined. We can immediately set up everything for them. If they don't have, if they haven't been onboarded yet with those exchanges, and includes the DEXs, they can do, if they have a wallet that they connected to Hyperliquid or Lighter, Aster, it doesn't matter. We are fully integrated with those venues. So we can aggregate liquidity, we can back out the risk to those venues. You can do all sorts of things.
And if you're a CEO or the chief strategy officer at a broker, and you think, I want to get into this space, how long should they budget in terms of time?
So I think that the biggest questions that they need to answer are, it's no longer a technology question, right? If they are talking to us, it's about what is the experience that I'm going to put in front of my clients, and how much am I going to invest in the customization of these environments that I'm going to put in front of my clients. The questions are the legal requirement questions, right? For you to obtain the right licenses, where what kind of jurisdiction you're going to be operating in. And the last thing that they need to think about is how long it's going to take for them to actually be onboarded with all these venues or this prime broker. And that is something that varies. But the moment that they have at least one liquidity source, and we can help them, they would be putting something in front of their clients as soon as 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 6 weeks. We can put something in front of their clients that is going to probably be superior to the interface that they are currently using to some extent. I don't want to come across the wrong way, but I've been interacting with the trading software for a long time, and I know that what we have here is quite special, and I think that they would be able to put this in front of their clients very fast.
Okay, so just to be going back to the kind of practical question, they're probably better off talking to you first rather than to a digital asset prime broker, because you would then suggest which prime broker is perhaps going to be more efficient for them and so on. So you're going to provide them with some consultative suggestions.
We absolutely do this. By the way, full disclosure, we get no referral fees from our, and this is something that happens quite a lot in the market, that people offer. If you send them away, I'll give you a
Kickback.
kickback. None of this is part of my business model. I am genuinely building infrastructure. The people that pay me for my services are my partners that are using my platform and my infrastructure. So what I tend to do is based on their needs, right? What is the ideal partner, liquidity provider, or venue, or prime broker for what they are trying to do? And then I give them the options, and I make them the introductions, and they go on to figure out if it will work out for them or not. Once they have those relationships, then building their infrastructure using Quadra Prime as their operating system and getting a branded version of Quadra Trade in front of their clients, that is generally a seamless experience, and it happens. It may happen very fast.
Okay. You're getting quite big in South America. We spoke earlier about what you're doing in Brazil. Could you talk about that a little bit, Pedro?
So I don't know if people are paying attention to what's happening, right? But Brazil, for instance, is the 5th largest market for digital assets, right? They are transacting, I don't know, somewhere around 380 billion in volumes on a yearly basis, of which about 80% of that volume, give it or take, is stablecoin, right? So any of these countries where you have FX capital controls, right? And we are talking mostly of all of these emerging markets economies where you have non-deliverable forwards, you have all of those things. They found a more efficient way to actually do cross-border payments, which is through the crypto rails. So what has happened is that Brazilian banks, for decades, they had a very interesting, with very high margins business that was that corporate cross-border payments business. And in the past 5 years, they've seen their market share shrink very, very fast. And the corporates in Brazil, they were using OTC providers, OTC desks, to actually move money across borders. And it became very, very, very important for the markets. So it became so important that the Brazilian Central Bank started noticing this. And in the past year, they've passed sweeping reforms and regulation, and they are continually updating the markets, and they changed a bunch of things. And now Brazil has become one of the most regulated jurisdictions for digital assets in the world. With this regulation, I know that people sometimes they think that the more regulation you have, the worse. It's not true in all the cases. In some cases, it means more clarity. It means eliminating the hurdles for you to actually make significant investments as a company. The Brazilian Central Bank has brought in digital assets to be monitored and enforced in a similar way that you do with FX markets, for instance. What that means, however, for the companies that were operating in digital assets in the region is that it has become a little bit more tricky for them, because now they need to invest. They need to invest to become an authorized VASP in the region. They need to invest to have their systems being able to report the transactions. So there is all of that investment that needs to take place. And at the same time, all of the Brazilian banks, and we are talking about dozens of commercial banks that were operating for decades in the FX markets, that have seen their market share shrink dramatically because people were using digital assets, are now being given the option to actually offer the dual rail. They can offer the fiat rail and the crypto rail. And they have a cliff end dates to do this, to get the authorization from the central bank and to offer these products to their clients. So this has presented a unique opportunity for us. we sell infrastructure, right? We offer this infrastructure that does all of these things. So we started going to the banks in Brazil, and we started showing what Quadra Prime could do, right? In terms of liquidity segregation, risk transfer, cross-border payments, the treasury systems that they require to trade. And it became a massive growth story for us. We have now a couple banks that are using our software in the region. We have about 7 other banks that are in the final stages of, we are doing the workshops with them to specify, to do all the specification for the implementation that they require. So we are opening an office in São Paulo. We have brought in some very, very senior sales executives to bolster our presence in the region. We are 7 people now in São Paulo. We are expecting to get to around 15 or 20 people by middle of next year in the region.
Very interesting. Is that a model that could be reproduced in other countries?
Absolutely. I think that I think that's funny that people sometimes they think that we are, we are in the first innings. Not that I know anything about baseball analogy, but I know that we are in the very beginning of what's happening. So what you're seeing in Brazil is a preview of what is going to be replicated in multiple different jurisdictions. And in some of them, and these regulatory changes, they offer opportunities to companies like ours, right? Because you all of a sudden, there is a bit of regulation that changes, and then the companies, they need to be ready to become compliant to that regulation.
Yeah.
For these companies they can go. Some of them are big enough and they have the right team and support that they can implement those changes in a seamless way. But other companies, they struggle. Every time that something like this happens, it becomes a massive issue for them. So having a company like ours that has the data and has thought about this and has a multinational global exposure to different types of regulatory jurisdictions. We have clients that are in Europe. We have clients that are in Dubai. So this gives us a preview of what all of these guys are doing, and we can borrow a lot of that and to put something on air for these guys in any region much, much faster than they would be able to do otherwise.
Brilliant. Pedro, I was going to give you the opportunity to show some of the screens, because if people have managed to last this far, we're almost at an hour. I think it's only, as a little bonus, we could show what the platform looks like, if that's...
I can show Quadra Trades. How about that? And then people can have an idea of everything that we do in Quadra. Can I share my screen here? Okay,
you should be able to, yeah.
Please let me know if you can see my screen.
I can see your screen.
This was our first products. By the way, you can do all sorts of things here, right? When people create accounts with us, they can add their team members. You can manage the connectivity to multiple different exchanges, right? We are integrated with all of these players here that you see. We are integrated with multiple different prime brokers, custodians. And not only this, guys, anything that's in the platform, right? We are connected to all these different venues. People can generate an API key, and you have a unified API that you can use to extract data from all of the exchanges, all the different venues, liquidity providers, your balances. You can do all of those things programmatically as well. So what do we have here? We have a platform that condenses execution, risk, portfolio, all in a single interface. You can trade in multiple different venues. You can see here, for instance, I have a watch list with different with BTC from multiple different venues. I can just drag and drop, for instance, and I'm immediately connecting to the order books on any of those venues. And then you can select your sub accounts in those venues. You can start trading. You can do all sorts of things. You have, for instance, let me show some of the portfolio management capabilities and risk management that we have on the platform. For instance, you have a live trading blotter. You have, for instance, wallet balances. And I don't know if you guys can see, I can stretch, I can change things, I can do all sorts of things inside the platform, and then I can snap all back if I want. I have, for instance, all live positions in one place, order history. I can see trade history if I have any open orders in multiple different venues. And Sam, you did mention something about pre-IPO stocks, right? When we
Yep.
were talking, you can see here that I'm working a small order here on Anthropic in Kraken, right? So we have one of the exchanges, and I'm working the order using my interface. We have a collateral management screen that allows you to monitor your margin utilization across all the different venues. You have all sorts of things. In terms of execution, I think that this is where sometimes people underestimate where digital assets are today, right? One of the biggest things for us is that if you are interacting with liquidity in multiple different venues, you do require to have algorithmic execution, right? So you can trade in those venues. For instance, through our platform, you have single order book algos, right? So you have all of these different algos that you can interact with liquidity in any venue, right? I can go, for instance, let's say I want to buy BTC USDD spots. I want to see Binance, right? And I load Binance's order book. I can interact using some of these algos, right? I can also use a smart order router to do that, right? So I can do things like this. And then I can select all of the different venues that I have access, or I can select a few of them. You see here how the bid offer spread has inverted, Sam. Is almost 1 basis point inverted when I select 3 different exchanges. This is to show the fragmentation of the market. I would be able to sell this at 62,892, and I would be able to buy this at 62,885.
Free money.
Free money? To some extent. The issue is that most of these exchanges, they will charge like 7 basis points, 3 basis points, depending on your VIP level. But if you are a very active user, yeah, it's free money for market makers, right? Those guys that are operating. You can then select all of the different sub-accounts that you want to trade, and you can start routing these orders and achieving best price execution. We also have things like spread execution algos, right? One of the popular things in crypto is for people to do the spot and futures carry trades. You buy spot and sell the future. You can do this simultaneously here. Or you could do things that are a little bit more exciting. You can trade perpetual swaps arbitrage, funding arbitrage across multiple different venues. So you can do all of these things. The platform comes with advanced charting capabilities, but there is more. We have here, if you can see, we have a live transaction cost analysis screen that you can actually see your fee profile, price profile, tracking error, participation rates, all of those things in a single interface. I think that the last thing I'm going to show you is something quite exciting, actually. We have also analytics screens. We are product agnostic. Okay, so we have things like let me just select here, blended view. We have our own volatility surface, our own yield curves on the platform. So what I'm going to show you here is something that we've just launched. It's calculating a blended vol surface. So you can see here, I can see all of the at the money vols. I can see all of the different smiles. I can see my term structure. I can do things like this, right? So let me maximize this, and then I can see the historical risk reversals. All of those things are available in the platform. So the platform is highly versatile, is multi-product, assets. So any FX CFD broker that wants to white label this entire thing, they can. and they can make it their own, right? So if they are offering only CFDs and spots, they can remove and strip out all of the derivative sides. If they want to offer the derivative sides, they can offer. It is already ready. So when they are ready to add new products, their tech is going to be ready as well. So this is the beauty of using something like Quadra at this point.
Well, I have to congratulate you. That was a pretty seamless tech demo. They don't usually go quite as problem-free as that. So that's great. Great to give people a little view of the platform. It's
absolutely
very sophisticated. So.
Definitely, yeah. I'm always excited. Obviously, everything that I showed you guys here is my own version of the software. Right. At the end of the day, people can do all sorts of things. Right. You can close everything, you can go here and you can start building the layouts that you want. Right. And you can. And your clients will be able to do this as well, right? Imagine this, right? Your clients or you can customize this entire experience and put this in front of your clients. You can go trades history, and then you put your trading blotter right there. And then you say, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller and fit in here. You can start building anything, and then you save this layout, or you can do this for your clients, and then your clients get to experience whatever setup you want them to see, right? You can control this experience. Some of the trading interfaces and front ends out there, they can be overwhelming, right? Some of them are very outdated in the looks. They've been used since the early 2000s. You can build this whole thing and have something very modern and put this with your brand in front of your clients in no time using Quadra Trades. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Exciting. So let's talk a little bit about the state of the market just for a couple of minutes. We're seeing a sideways market right now in for example, Bitcoin. There is excitement in the kind of pre-IPO tokenized stocks area. Let's just talk about the price of Bitcoin and what's happening there as an example, because, obviously it had a massive run. It's come back significantly. Where do you see any future ignitions in the market again? Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Carry on sideways?
I would never give you a direction.
Yeah.
I would never give you a direction. Am I personally still bullish some of the digital assets, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana? The answer is yes. Do I think that they have a massive role to play in what's going to happen when there is this convergence of digital and traditional assets? Absolutely. I think that the public blockchains will have a place. I think Bitcoin as a hedge against uncontrolled deficits is still a big story. I do think that what has happened is that there is a lot more competing for capital today.
Yeah.
The narrative has shifted. We went from thinking about blockchain as a hedge for this monetary expansion that has been happening for the past decades and has intensified since COVID. I think that never in history we've had the levels of deficits that we have right now in times of peace. Obviously, we are having conflicts and wars everywhere, but it's not the same thing as the World War. And where you have this level of unemployment and this the magnitude in which we are having fiscal stimulus and assistance to the markets. So I think that this story is not going to change, right? As Lynn Alden says, nothing stops this train. Right, this train is going to continue to go. Now, what's happening to the price of Bitcoin and digital assets today? I think that has nothing to do with those things that I've discussed. I think that the narrative was changed. Right, so everything focused. All the capital started focusing on the new things. Where
AI, for example,
AI infrastructure, CapEx, SpaceX, all of those things. Right, those things were very compelling, and you have this massive financialization of markets for retail players as well. So never in history, retail players had access to all of those things. So people started allocating in different things. They started investing on different products, different areas. They started speculating. A lot more. So I think that is a momentary thing where capital is going to the biggest positive narrative story of the moment. That is AI and some of these big names. I think invariably you are going to get a narrative change in the markets. Crypto is still trading. When you look at the fear greed index, we are close to extreme fear still. But I think that we are starting to see some interesting signs, right? If you were paying attention to options markets, and you saw that we had some very extreme levels with the skew that became very, very negative. This is still negative, but we are no longer at the extreme levels that we were before. We started seeing as well a resumption of the inflows into the ETFs. Right, last week, in the last 2-3 weeks, we started seeing positive inflows in the ETFs of BTC and Ethereum. So all of those things are happening already. So I think that the narrative is shifting. I think that people are starting to realize that the AI story is massive, and probably I wouldn't say that is overdone or anything like this yet, but they are realizing that something that has a payout that is much longer than they were expecting, right? So for these companies to become profitable is going to take up a long time. The investment that's required is massive. I think that some of that capital will start rotating. They made a lot of money on those things. There was a very famous hedge fund now that had to be liquidated and sold some of their portfolio to Citadel. It was all over the news.
Yep.
Even after being liquidated, they were still up 80% on the year, right? So you have like the returns that people made on AI. Some people were expressive. It's natural for me, I think, that some of this profit taking that will eventually happen or is happening right now, we will eventually rotate into other assets, and crypto is not going to be unallocated. I think that you will see some money going there again, and it's a matter of changing the narrative. What is the catalyst? I think that the current catalyst that everybody seems to be expecting is Clarity Act, right? They are waiting for the regulatory changes or clarity. It's terrible to use clarity to talk about clarity. But I think that this has been pushed now to September. So we have probably until September to languish a little bit more. But I think that inevitably at some point we see a resumption of what we saw, where Bitcoin and some of the digital assets, they act as a counterbalance to the ever expanding deficits of governments. And I think that this story is not going to change. I think that governments will continue to print money. And I think that invariably in the long term or the medium term, Bitcoin will catch a bid. And when it does, we are going to be making new highs and so on and so forth.
Okay, great insight, Pedro. And I suppose the other thing is, if people want to get interested in the AI stock hype, boom, whatever, that can be done through tokenized assets as well. Through
absolutely, this was one of the biggest things that we saw. Was the fact that people are now being given an opportunity to actually participate in this pre-IPO markets. So this is something very interesting and is worth mentioning, right? Yeah. Is this democratization of access to certain investment opportunities that people didn't have before. Only a few selected players had access to this. So I think that this is also going to be transformational, and people can do this now interacting with crypto exchanges. They can do this using my platform, and they can get access to a wide array of different opportunities.
Okay, well, Pedro, been a very, very interesting conversation. Thank you very much for your time. It's quite a long one. I hope people manage to stay through it to the end, because I think everything you've been saying is like a nugget of insight into the market, and the bonus demo as well is unusual to get on these sort of interviews. So thank you for that. And
I appreciate this, Sam. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm an avid consumer of the podcasts that you produce, so I'm honored to be here and very excited to have done this today with you.
Thank you very much, and we'll see each other in person soon. Thank you, Pedro.
Thank you. Bye.